Abby and Kat were born in 1997 and became best friends when they were 6. Grew up together and started a band and bonded over music ever since. 20 years later, they are all grown up and spend their free time analyzing lyrics. Now here they are talking all about their Lord and Savior, Dr. Taylor Allison Swift. Taylor, if you're listening, we love you.
Welcome to Swiftlore Podcast, where we dive into lyrics and lore for Lord and Savior, Dr. Taylor Allison Swift.
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
I'm Kat.
I'm Abby.
Thumbs up. We're out here.
We are. We just had an amazing conversation. We talked about so much good stuff. We talked about psychology. We talked about writing. We talked about Taylor Swift. We talked about community. We talked about the patriarchy and Taylor Swift. Pretty much everything under the sun. And we didn't cover all the things we wanted to. So you'll probably be hearing from this guest again, who I just realized we haven't said her name yet.
Oh, yeah. So today we have on the amazing Britton Rae.
Wow.
And yeah, I feel like no more introduction. Let's just dive right in because I loved recording that so much. So you guys are going to love hearing it, I hope.
Yeah. So here's our interview.
So welcome, Britton, to Swiftlore Podcast.
Thank you.
So exciting. We're so excited to have you on.
I'm so excited to be here.
We asked Britton to come on after I saw, a bunch of your TikToks because I followed you for a while, but specifically your Chloe et al. TikTok where you're talking about how Chloe, Sam, Sophia, Marcus. Why do I feel like I'm saying that in the wrong order?
I say it wrong every time.
You got it.
Like how they're all like versions of herself that she's turned into. Amazing. I was like hit in the comment section, like, please come on the podcast right now. And now here we are like a week later.
Oh, I was so excited when you messaged me. I was like, this is literally the best thing that anyone could possibly ever say to me is, would you like to come talk about Taylor Swift even more than you already do? Of course.
Yes. Exactly. Like that's the best part about having a Taylor Swift podcast is we just get all of our Taylor Swift yapping out in one place.
Y'all are literally living my dream.
And we've noticed that like whenever we invite guests on, they're all so happy to talk about Taylor Swift with us too.
Oh, yeah.
It's just such a positive space for us to yap. It's great.
Oh, I mean, I know Swifties like as a whole, not all of them, but for the most part, it's just the best fandom, like the most wonderful, sweetest vibes. And I know like, unfortunately, sometimes one bad apple does spoil the whole bunch, but for the most part, like at least the people I interact with on a daily basis, I don't ever see anything except like just the kindest, most wonderful people.
Same. Yeah. And I felt that at the Eras tour too. It was just like everyone there loved Taylor and just had the best energy.
100%. Did you get to go to any Eras tour shows?
I did. I went to two. I went to Atlanta night 1 and I went to Nashville night 1.
Ooh, fun.
Wow. So what were
you got Invisible String in Nashville, right? Or was that Nashville? So you got
we did.
One after it came off the set list.
I was there. My Nashville show was when when she announced Speak Now. So I got to see that. So that was so exciting.
I remember I was watching the live stream. I was at a bar. I was at Roar, which is like a gay bar in New Paltz in Rochester. New Paltz is where I went to college. I don't know why that's on the brain. And I was like on my phone. My friends are like, there's a drag show going on. And I'm like, Taylor Swift is doing something right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's like, I feel like that's the second best vibes to actually being at the Eras tour is being at a gay bar, at a drag show. Like, that's amazing.
That's true. That's true.
That's genuinely the Eras tour is probably like the safest environment I think I've ever been in. I was just like, this feels like, and I tried to, so my boyfriend had never been to a Taylor Swift concert and he got to come with me to Atlanta. And I tried to like prepare him because I was like, you don't understand this is not a concert. Like this is an experience unlike anything else. And every other concert, not that other artists are not talented by any means, but I'm like, it's just different. Like it is different. I don't know how to explain it. And it was so funny that within like just the opening, I just looked over at him and he was just like, and by the time we left, he was like, that was like a Broadway play, a concert, like a storytelling, like it was everything. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And he was like, she has like props and comes out and acts out things. Like he was mind blown by the Evermore set, just everything about it. Like that's his favorite album. So
wow.
It was very fun, like watching someone who has never seen a Taylor Swift concert before it just seeing it, like I wish I could experience it for the first time. I'm so glad I've been to multiple of her concerts, but I just feel like the Eras Tour, if that was your first like experience at a live Taylor Swift
That was our
production,
first.
y'all's first, was it
Mhm.
crazy to be
It
like,
was
oh,
insane.
yeah.
I cried so many times. I
I
cried
just
at Miss Americana. I cried at You Belong With Me. Obviously Marjorie.
Yep.
But like I think I cried like once every set
Yeah.
at least.
it's literally amazing. It's indescribable. Like
Yeah.
it's best.
Like the vibes are just so good.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much effort and love put into the show.
hmm
And then, like, I remember specifically wanting to get a picture in front of the stage, and some random girl was like, "Hey, I can take your picture." And I felt
Yeah.
safe enough to give this stranger my phone. And then she took
Oh
a
yeah.
couple pictures, and she was like telling me how to pose and doing multiple angles. And it was just like the most open,
It's the best.
like, you wouldn't be able to do that at every show. But at this one, I'm like, you
No.
get it. You get the vibes.
Yeah, some
That's
shows you're like, nobody look at me. If somebody tries, like some concerts I've been to, like I went to Lollapalooza over the summer, obviously very
Yeah.
different vibe. I'm like, is anybody gonna steal my phone? Like, is anybody gonna steal my
Mhm.
water? Are people gonna bump into me? Taylor Swift
Yeah.
is like, okay, yeah, everybody is so excited here, and everybody's just
It's
so happy and
it's
like
just
trading friendship bracelets and having a good time.
it's literally, I keep saying indescribable, but the vibes are just indescribable. Even like the merch lines and stuff. So I really wanted the blue crew neck like everybody. And in Nashville, they set up the merch like 2 or 3 days before. And so I literally waited in the line for, I think it was like 3 hours, like waited for a long time, but I was so determined. But I had the best time because I made so many friends in line and everyone's talking about like which show they were going to, which ones they've already been to, and we could hear like sound check going on. And that's when we heard Phoebe Bridgers. We were like, I think she's going to do Nothing New with Phoebe Bridgers, and was so excited about that. Like, it was just so fun. I was like, there's no other artist that I can think of that has a fan base that would wait in these lines and also have fun in these lines, like it was just the best. I miss it so much.
No,
Yeah.
I feel like because I've been a Taylor Swift fan since like debut, but just never had like an opportunity to go to the concerts. Like the tours always fell at bad times, or like nobody wanted to go with. Like my parents wouldn't let me go travel far away to go to a concert without them, and
Mhm.
they did not want to go to a Taylor Swift concert. So I
Yeah.
went to the Eras tour, but like worth the wait.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Like
The first one that I went to was 1989, and it's kind of similar for me growing up. Like, I just didn't really know that until I got to high school that people will like travel to go to concerts and everything. And I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and Taylor Swift never like came to Birmingham, Alabama. But I actually got to kind of see her. This is a fun story somewhat. So I'm also a fan since debut. When is her for Halloween that year and everything. Like I loved her so much. Because my family also grew up listening to country music. So that's why I really started to love her too, because I was like a little kid and I was a young girl and there weren't a lot of, young girls on country radio. And so when I was just obsessed with her and loved her album, loved everything about it. And then we went to the beach and there's this condo called The Wharf in Orange Beach. It's still there. I think it's still called The Wharf, but they had like an amphitheater there. And that's when she was opening up. I don't know if it was on the full tour. Was it Brad Paisley that she opened up for?
I think so.
Or
That's right.
I know it wasn't. I think it was
Might have
Brad
been Tim
Paisley.
McGraw also.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Was it Tim McGraw? Either
I think he
way,
opened for
they were
both, so it
playing.
could have been either.
It could have been either one because I didn't care about who it was, but she opened up for somebody at the wharf at the amphitheater, and we didn't have tickets, but we did have a condo there. And so we went and sat like on this hill where we could see it, kind of like you could see the top of the screens, and so I could kind of see her, but I could hear her. And I was like, this is the most incredible thing that has ever happened to me. I love this woman so much. And then didn't get to go to Fearless, didn't get to go to Speak Now, but I did get to go to 1989 with a friend in high school. And we came to Nashville. And that's actually when the seed was planted where I was like, I want to live here.
Do you live in Nashville now?
I do live in Nashville. Yeah. I've been here. I came to college here, but that's where I got the idea. I was like, how can I move here? And then I started looking at colleges that were here and I was like, I found a way.
That's amazing. I feel like you're
Yeah.
sitting like and seeing the screens from a distance. It was just like an Easter egg for the Munich show where they were all up on the hill.
Oh yeah.
You were
Yeah.
just a prologue to it.
And I mean, that's one thing that I love about her so much is I can't, there are so many artists and so many, and even if it's not their own decision, but there are so many other concerts that those people would have been shooed away, and I just love that she not only made sure that they could stay, but also acknowledged them and like waved at them and everything, that I love everything. I love everything about her.
I know. I feel like she does such a good job of like fostering community by just being so honest about like her own thoughts and emotions. Also, sorry if
Oh
you can
yeah.
hear my dog whining. She's really
Oh
mad
no,
that
you're
she's in her
fine.
crate
I
right
have
now.
one as well, and if anything happens in the outside world that he can see, he's gonna bark at it. So
Um, I got distracted in the middle of my thought because I just heard spear.
you're fine.
Oh yeah, community. I feel like because she's just so like honest and open in her lyrics and so many people relate to them, it creates like a space of maybe not emotional vulnerability, but like shared emotional states where it's like you say your favorite song is one thing and somebody else has the same favorite song and in some way like you both have the same experiences.
Mhm.
Like it might look different,
Oh
but like
yeah.
the core is still there, which I just
Yes.
her songwriting is so incredible.
It's so incredible. And on the same hand, it's amazing that like that even just from the series that I've been doing recently of talking about my interpretations of different songs, specifically on Tortured Poets Department, it is so fun because I try to always preface mainly because people scare me on TikTok where I'm like, don't come for me. I just always preface every video by saying, good art is interpretive and there are countless interpretations of any song. So this is just mine. Feel free to add yours because I can just already picture the like, no, it's not, and stuff
Yeah, we've
like
gotten
that.
some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've tried my best to preface that I'm not trying to say this is fact by any means, but this is just what I take it as. But it's so fun to see how many people will have such a different interpretation, but when they say it, I can totally see exactly what they're talking about. And I'm like, that is just so amazing that she first of all, I know she writes them and has different meanings in her mind as she's writing them. Most likely, whatever the actual real lived experience that she had that inspired the song. And then she sees other ways where she can, manipulate the words to mean something else and sees all these different interpretations. But I know that she probably even sits and reads some of the things that her fans say and is like, I didn't even think of that. And that's so cool to me that you can be such a talented just wordsmith and have the same core elements of a story and then have 10 people read it and have 10 people have different interpretations from it that all work perfectly. Like, I just love that so, so much.
I know it's like as a former English major, it's like it's so funny seeing people be like, no, that's wrong because like this is my interpretation. It's like, well, both of us can be right because neither of us are
Mhm.
Taylor
Right.
Swift. And also
Right.
like you wouldn't last an hour in a liberal arts college. Like
Exactly. Exactly. Also, I don't know if y'all can hear the barking, but
a little
the
bit.
barking can. Yeah.
Somehow Shakespeare, my dog, can hear it because she's also beyond whining
Oh,
again. She can sense it. She's
he's
like,
singing Taylor Swift lyrics if it helps.
Oh yeah.
that's like
There
Summer
are, I
Young,
don't
State of Grace. That's the her favorite Taylor Swift song. Anytime I put it
really.
on, she'll stop whatever she's doing and sit and listen. It's so funny.
That's literally what I was just about to ask you if there are any songs that your dog loves because my dog personally loves Seven, which is so funny.
Really?
He will
That's so
howl to
fun.
Seven. So that's so fun for him. I don't know what it is about that song, but something really speaks to his spirit with that one.
Oh my gosh, I love your dog.
What if
He's
we have
great. He's a good
matching
boy.
seven tattoos so
We
that
do.
or like pair, not matching,
Yeah,
because I have
yeah.
the moon and she has Saturn.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah. It was really nice. It was also kind of spontaneous.
It was lightly spontaneous.
It was like a month in advance we decided
Yeah,
to do it.
because I'm working on like a Shakespeare slash Taylor Swift sleeve. So I've got like my little like flowers for Ophelia with a snake under it from Antony and Cleopatra, which
Yeah,
giving Karen
I love that so much.
my little
That's
moon.
so fun. I've been tempted a few times to get a Taylor Swift tattoo. I don't have any tattoos. So I feel like when you have none, you really overthink like the first one from what I hear. And then once you get one, it's like you've ripped the band-aid off and you're more open to making quicker decisions with them. But I have not settled on one yet. I almost got a Mirrorball tattoo.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I didn't because the idea I had for it was really like just strange. So I was
What was it?
I was thinking about like how could I do something about like a like a silhouette of somebody on a tightrope, but the way that I pictured it in my head, I was like, I don't think that it will look as poetic as I think. I was like, I feel like it'll look like a stick figure on a line.
Yeah, I definitely think that the first tattoo is always the most like intense experience. And then after that, it just gets too easy.
Yeah.
Too easy to do. I think technically I have 2 Taylor Swift tattoos now.
I have
There's a lot going on.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm getting
See,
a 6
that's
this
how I
month.
would be too. All of my
Yeah.
tattoos would be Taylor Swift based. And then I've thought of that and been like, well, I don't want people to think I'm an absolute crazy fan. But now I'm like, that Band-Aid, that ship has sailed. Like that
Exactly. I'm
Band-Aid
like,
has
I'm
been
crazy
pulled
and I'm
off.
proud.
Yeah, I'm literally writing a book. So
Yeah. So
like,
let's dive into that because I
Great
want to
segue.
hear exactly. I want to hear all about it, how it
yeah.
came to be, what
Yeah.
it is.
So basically, long story short, I have always wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to be an author, and I just had no idea at all how to go about that. That's part of the reason that I went to school where I did. I went to Belmont in Nashville, which is very much an art school, very much more music related. But they have like an excellent motion pictures program. They have excellent just anything entertainment related, but they're primarily known for music business. And so when I got here, I really wanted to be a writer, like I said, but I just didn't know exactly like, do I want to write books or do I want to write for TV or film or anything like that? So I kind of started to go the motion pictures route and then learned quickly that that program is like phenomenal, but it's mainly about learning how to actually make films like from start to finish. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. I'm learning a lot of things that is really cool, but is not what I want to do. So I switched to entertainment industry studies just because that felt like a big umbrella of you kind of learn all aspects of the entertainment industry. And I also just like truly didn't know what I was doing. And I was just in college, mainly having a good time, living life, having fun, and not thinking too far into the future of how am I going to get this going? What am I going to do? And along the way, I ended up really falling in love with psychology. And so I thought maybe I want to do something in this area from some of the classes that I took. And so I ended up going to grad school to become a therapist. And while I was like, literally, I had that feeling of this is not what I really want to be doing. This isn't like my dream life, but it's something I'm good at. So I should force myself to want to do it, because the material like felt not necessarily easy to me, but it just really made sense to me. But the point where like I really realized this is not something I should be doing is when I was sitting in class and everything we were learning about hypothetical diagnoses and things like that. I was like getting ideas for a poem and I would write down a poem real quick, or I would write down like an idea for a character. And I was like, I can't be a therapist who sees her clients as inspiration for characters in their fiction novels, like that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. And so that like pit in my stomach was just growing and growing and growing until I guess now almost a full year ago, over a full year ago, it was between like the Christmas break where we had time off from school. And so it was like in December of, I guess, 2020. Now I'm like all messed up because it's a new year, 2023. But I was sitting there and I was like, I do not want to go back in January. I do not want to go back. I feel like I have made a big mistake and I am quickly speeding down a road that's just going to get harder to get off of the further I go down it. And so I was like, what I've wanted to do my entire life is be a writer, and I don't know how to get started with that, but I'm just going to try to do it myself, and I'm not going to go down this path anymore. So I dropped out of grad school and started a Substack on the same day, like had the windows open at the same time, was like titling my Substack grad school dropout, and then was on the other page, like hitting my submit form, making sure that I wasn't going to have to pay for the next semester and everything. And I had no idea what I was going to write about, but I was like, I'm just going to start sharing my poetry and doing things like this and like try to post about my writing on TikTok and we'll see, what happens. And while throughout the process of like the next few months of doing that, I actually Tortured Poets Department was announced and she put the track list out. So I did a little series on poems inspired just by the track list of what I predict the songs will sound like. And so I did some of those and they didn't do like phenomenally well or anything like that, but they were starting to get a little bit of traction to where I was like, there are people out there that are reading, you know, my poetry, even if it's only a handful of people. I just started, so let's keep going with this. So I also love talking about Taylor Swift, and the Eras Tour was still going on. So I was making a lot of, you know, Swiftie content. And then just one day randomly, I made this video and had literally zero intentions of thinking that this would turn into a book by any means. It was just like a thought popped into my brain, took my phone out, and I was like, this would be such a good idea. Someone needs to do this. Someone needs to make a TV show where every single character in the show is inspired by a Taylor Swift album, and it's a murder mystery, and they're all working together to like solve the murder. And every episode, I was kind of thinking of like Euphoria, how every episode of that show kind of focuses on the backstory of one character. So it was like every episode could focus on the backstory of one character and how they got involved in this murder mystery and how they all led up to meet each other, but they'll all have like the vibes of the album that they're inspired by. And so I made that, and that video went like pretty viral for me at the time. It had like 30,000 views or somewhere around there. And I was like, oh my gosh. And people were saying, you know, this would be amazing, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I can't write a TV show and produce a TV show by myself, but I could write a book. So that's where the idea came from. And I, again, had no idea how I was going to get started in writing a book, but I just used my Substack as a way to post chapter previews. And the chapter previews were literally like, I would write something and I would proofread it like once very quickly and then post it. And mainly for the purpose of, I was like, if this does get turned into a book one day, then I will probably like go back through all of these and fine tune them. And that way the first draft, like no one will have anything spoiled for them because it will have changed so much after I really like invest in it. And it just gained traction. And I had a couple videos get in the millions of views, and that got me exposure to be able to get an agent who was like, definitely want to make this happen. Let's get this going. And so it is going to be a real book now. And we're almost done with it. I have about 3 chapters left to write and then some edits to do, but it's moving quicker than I thought it would. And it's definitely been a huge learning process to write poetry is one thing, but to write an entire book is like a whole other thing that I've just learned a lot through the process, but it has been so much fun. And it's also made me dive into Taylor Swift lore even more because I have to like, I consider it research, you know, I'm like studying these albums to make them into characters and
watching a music video and you're like, this is actually my job. Like,
yes,
I'm doing work. It's
exactly. And that's really like why I started this series that I've been doing about Tortured Poets Department. Is one of the biggest things that I've done with my book is I've really looked into not just like the themes of her album, but specifically the literature that she pulls from for her albums to be able to even put more little Easter eggs in my books. Or in my book for this, because my whole book is kind of surrounded by literature. It's about every character is some way, shape, or form connected to the publishing world through either, you know, music, books, movies, and that kind of thing. So a lot of their characters are not just inspired by the albums that they're supposed to be inspired by, but they're also inspired by the characters that Taylor Swift references in those albums. So one of the most direct ones, because some of them are like some of the little Easter eggs that I can't say too much about without giving away a big thing with the book. But one of them is very obvious, is Cassandra. And that obviously is inspired by the Tortured Poets Department. And it's very much like the entire theme of that specific song is what started my idea to personify her into a character for the hypothetical TV show, which is now a book. But maybe will be a TV show one day. We'll see how well it goes. But anyway, yeah, so like that song, that's like the biggest clue I can give about that character is that song. Like if you listen to that song, that's all you need to know about the narrator of this entire story. Because that's the cool thing too, is that the whole thing. Yeah, I'm so glad. The whole thing is narrated by one person. It's all narrated by Cassandra. So that's an interesting thing about it too, because if you just like, this will be my little Easter egg that I'll give. If you think about 11 different albums or 11 different characters, but you're only getting one perspective of the entire thing, that's something that could be somewhat contradictory of the entire story, you know? So that's a big like element of it in itself.
I love
a biased narrator. That's like, oh, I'm so excited. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. I'm also sitting here like, I feel like you are just me and Kat in a blender because I am finishing up my graduate degree in mental health counseling right now.
Really? That's
Yeah. Like I
amazing.
graduate in May. I've been doing it for the last 2.5 years.
That's so
So
awesome.
we might have even started around the same time.
Yeah, I started in August of 2023.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay. So I started the year before you, but
okay, gotcha.
we were there at the same time.
That's so
There was
funny.
Cool.
overlap in the world of
There
therapists in
was.
training.
There was. And it's so interesting because hearing you talk about your experience reminds me of my first degree. My first degree is in sign language interpretation. And
Okay.
I knew the whole time that I wanted to be a therapist. Like the whole time I knew.
Hmm.
And but it was like a more practical thing was being an
Right.
interpreter because I knew that I wouldn't have to get my graduate degree and there would always be work, et cetera, et cetera. Not that there won't always be work for therapists, but
Especially now.
right.
Your career set.
I'm set.
Yeah.
But I just knew it wasn't like my passion. And I knew that even
Mhm.
though getting my graduate degree was going to be more work and it was going to be difficult and all of that, I was like, that's worth it to me. And that feels very similar to your experience of like,
Yeah.
I want to be a writer. And I think that's so awesome.
I also
Yeah.
thought it was funny because when you were saying like you're learning in class about stuff and like taking notes about like ideas for like poems and things, like I think about that all the time when either I'm talking to her about like being a therapist or like talking to my therapist. And I'm like, how do you not like just take pieces of this and turn it into like something else? Because I have a conversation with someone and I'm like, oh, great idea. Like my friend told me like something shitty about her ex and I went, can I put that in a book?
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
like, can I make like a villain have that trait? Because that's evil.
Yes.
That's so interesting because I don't do that because I also write a little bit. I'm
Mhm.
also working on a book technically. I don't know if it'll ever go anywhere, but it's
I'm
happening.
sure it will.
And oh, well, thank you. But that thought has never occurred to me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but
See,
interesting.
for me, it was like I realized because I was so conflicted about it because I really did love the stuff I was learning. And I really have like I'm so fascinated by psychology and just the brain in general. But I realized after I really like unpacked everything, I realized I'm fascinated in the brain in a different way as far as like I kind of what I was talking about with Taylor Swift's lyrics of I love how different brains see the world differently and how every single brain no, like you will never be able to truly understand somebody else. You can understand aspects of their life or their experiences that they share with you, but you'll never fully be able to understand any perspective other than your own, which again, that's why I also love a biased narrator because we're all biased narrators. So there's no such thing as an unbiased narrator, you know? But anyway, it's just so like I guess I got to the point where I realized I like the idea of learning about the brain in a way that I can turn into my writing to be able to appeal to as many brains as possible and be able to write a story that can be interpreted so many different ways and also be able to learn about other brains. That way, I'm not only writing from the perspective of my brain, you know, I can do the best to like understand brains that function a little bit different than me or see things in a different way and write to be able to cater to those types of brains. I know this sounds so weird to be talking about, but that's really like what I got to the point of realizing of like, that's why I'm fascinated in the brain because I just love how different we all are, but also how at the core we are all so similar because we all are interested in the same things just in different ways, you know? And that's like really what I love about any kind of storytelling and any kind of song on the planet, really. I just think Taylor Swift is absolutely phenomenal at it, is that like we're all essentially poets. And I talked about this on my TikTok the other day, actually, but I think everyone is a poet because we all can describe how we're feeling. Being poetic about something is just being like unique in the way that you phrase things, you know, how you manipulate words. And in the hardest part, I really think people who are good writers actually just struggle the most to understand how they feel. And it takes them a lot more to play with words and put them together and make metaphors and make similes and comparisons and find central themes to be able to try to analyze what they're feeling. And some people just are not as, you know, don't struggle as much to isolate a feeling. And for me, I do, but not in like a crippling way or anything like that. It's like have a feeling, but I just want to understand every aspect of it. And so I will pick that feeling apart. And then that to me is poetry of like sitting there and breaking it down into a ton of different ways that I could see it, or ways I could see it from a different perspective. And it just ultimately comes down to like, I want to have a deeper understanding of myself and how I see the world, and that's like that was the point for me in grad school where I was like, I don't think other people are doing this in their desks. I don't think that they're seeing this as like, one thing was when we were talking a lot about anxiety in one of my classes, I was just thinking of so many different ways that I could hypothetically, if I was dealing with a client in the future, like different ways I could phrase it to them in like a poetic way that they would understand. Because in my brain, I'm like, I can't understand something until you take it out of its context and give it a metaphor and then give it back to me that way. And I'm like, I don't know if everyone would appreciate that. And if that's the goal of like becoming a therapist, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this. I think I want to be a writer. So yeah, it took me a lot to like unpack exactly why I like this so much. But I think that's the thing is like, finding your passion is a lot harder than people make it out to be, because while you know it and you have that deep like feeling, like you said you had of like, I want to be a therapist, and that it's like there's so much logic that can kind of convolute it where you're like, but this is more practical, this is more stable, this is more this, I'm good at this, and you start trying to fight yourself to justify why your dream isn't your dream, and so that's really what I was doing for the 6 months that I made it. It didn't make it very long.
Yeah. Well, I think what it comes down to is sitting with someone and feeling connected to them. And I think that can happen in a variety of ways. Like that's what standard counseling is you're sitting with someone and connecting with them and understanding them. But being able to write and tell stories or make music that also connects people in a similar way. And I think Taylor Swift is just excellent at doing that. Like you listen to one of her songs and you're just like, I feel seen by this. I feel connected to another human being about something that I didn't know that other people felt and I didn't even know how to say. So while I'm not going to be like, Taylor Swift equals therapy, but at the same time, like
It's a little bit of therapy.
it can be very therapeutic to feel connected to an artist in that way.
Yeah.
Same with
Yeah,
writing.
absolutely.
And I also think like, because I'm also a writer, and I think like a lot of what you're saying definitely resonates, because I know there's been like, I definitely like writers people watch, I feel like in a different way from like the average person, because it's like, I remember I was at a train station once and I had to like, was there like 2 hours early for my train because like that was the only time my friend could drop me off. And I just like sat in the cafe and like listened to the conversations around me and like took notes. And I was like, maybe I'll make this as a story one day. And then I was like, a normal person would just like put on their headphones and like not be eavesdropping and like writing things down to like make a story out of this. It's like you kind of like when you get into the writing mindset, I feel like you just start seeing the world differently because you see like the connections between things and the storylines that are going on around you at all times that you just don't even like think about until you like turn on that part of your brain. And then like, oh yeah, like these two people, like I can make a whole backstory. Like I love doing that if I'm out somewhere and like there's a lull in conversation. I'm just like, here's the backstory for these people that are over there.
Yes, I do that too. I love to do that so much. Like if I love, especially if you're ever sitting like at a table and then there's a couple sitting next to you, I love to like decide, are they on their first date or are they on their like 50th date, and what's the vibe? How did these people meet? And what's going on? And how's the date going? What is she thinking? Like I love doing that so much. It's
right,
so
like you look over and you're like, oh, this is a last date. I don't know if it's a first, but it's definitely.
Oh yeah.
I remember being at a restaurant once with like somebody that I was seeing, and I was like, oh man, the table behind us is totally about to break up. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, they've been silent for 5 minutes. They're both on their phones scrolling while eating. I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like they sat down and immediately stopped talking to each other. I'm like, oh, something happened there.
Because I do that so often, the amount of times that I'm at a restaurant with my boyfriend, and if I'm doing something, if I have to like edit a video or if I have to respond to some emails or whatever, and we're just like grabbing something and we're sitting there, I'm like, oh, I know other people are sitting around and they think that we are done and that we do not like each other or that this is the worst first date of our entire lives. And then I'm like, but does anybody else actually do that? Or is that just me?
Yeah. That's so interesting. I find this all very fascinating. Because it's also like actors. There are some actors where if they're an extra, they will have like a whole script that they've written out for themselves of their character and their backstory. And if they're like a character, they'll do that as well. But some actors don't choose that method. Like
Mhm.
there's all different ways to approach art, and it's just so interesting. I wonder, like, I don't know, this is my psychology brain, but I'm just wondering like what connects it, what makes people approach it one way or another, or is it just random? I don't know.
I feel like the English like background that I have, like there's just like a level of analysis that you have to go into in English classes to like be successful of like the amount of like close reading and like
Mhm.
noticing the details and like listen, anybody who's like the curtains are just blue, shut up.
Right.
If the blue curtains didn't matter, why did they say they were blue?
Right.
Word
Everything
counts are
matters.
limited unless it's Charles Dickens. He was getting paid by the word. That doesn't count. He was just saying shit. But like anybody else, they had to choose those words, especially older books, because
Mhm.
they like literally the printing press was so expensive to like print books. So, I have a lot
That's
of opinions on the blue curtain of
You
it
sound
all.
like you have the same brain as me, where like I refuse to believe that anything is just face value. Everything means something. Everything means something deeper. And even if like people don't realize it when they're talking about something, like I don't know if you do that, or maybe you even do that more because of your psychology background. But maybe I don't know if this is like a bad thing. I didn't make it far in grad school, so I don't know if this is like a bad thing to do. But I like psychoanalyze almost everything that somebody says to me, of like try to find the hidden like what they're actually saying, and just I feel like everybody gets so used to saying, if you just ask somebody how they're doing and they say that they're fine, and you are, if it's somebody that you know well enough to be like, no, you're not, what's going on? And then I start like just paying attention to everything that they're doing, their body language, everything, and then I will create a story in my head of like, you are clearly anxious about something, and this is what you did earlier today, so it's got to be this, so this probably happened. Like I will build a whole story, and then most of the time I do this to my boyfriend more than anybody. He loves it. But anyway, most of the time it's like something so not at all as dramatic as I created it to be, but I do that all the time. And I just like, I think everything has a backstory and everything is like deeper than what it is. And then if it's not, I will just then write it into a poem for myself.
Exactly. And I feel like it's like practicing doing character sketches just
Yes.
in real life. And like I remember this one time I was hanging out with one of my cousins and like another one of our family members had done something and I was like, "Oh, she did that because like I'm not gonna like put my family on blast." But like I was like, "She acted like this because of like these kind of things in her personality." And my cousin was just like, what do you mean? Like that makes so much sense. Like I never even thought of that before. I was like, doesn't everybody do that all the time? Doesn't everybody psychoanalyze everyone and give them backstories and explanations? Is this
Mhm.
not how people function? And it's not.
It's interesting because people ask me a lot if I psychoanalyze them or like if I'm diagnosing them or whatever, but I don't. Like I feel very much when I'm in the zone, when I'm with someone, then I have like therapy mode on. But
Mhm.
I also, one thing that they do teach us in school is we only know what the other person's telling us. And if you start to assume, then that can mess with things a little bit. So we're very much like in the moment with them, but we do also have to consider their background, their culture, everything else they've told us thus far, and consider that when thinking about like everything they say. So it's kind of like a fun puzzle, and I love puzzles.
Mhm.
That's so interesting. It's like you're finding the puzzle pieces, whereas like as writers, we're just like we're making up the puzzle
Yeah, you're
pieces.
Yes.
painting
Yeah.
it. That's
See,
really
you're
interesting.
you're going to be a good therapist. That's what you're supposed to do. You're the
You're not
opposite of
making up
what I was
backstories.
doing. Yes. I have like a theory for myself of why I do this, and it loops back to a Taylor Swift song that like made all of this click for me. But when I was growing up, when I was little, I'm very lucky for this. I had a very, very, very stable childhood, like very calm. But I think that's part of this is like I loved to create drama as a little kid because I didn't have a lot of it. And so even like my parents make jokes about this to this day of the way that I used to play with Barbie dolls, of like my Barbie dolls were never just shopping and having fun. My sister, she wanted to like set up the house and make it beautiful and just have like a calm little playhouse, whatever. I wanted there to be a tornado. I wanted there to be a tsunami. I wanted everyone to die. I wanted it to be so dramatic. Like, and we would get in fights about it because she was like, I don't want my Barbie doll to die. And I was like, your Barbie doll dies today. Like, that's what's happening. That's the narrative.
It
That
literally, I was a Bratz doll girl, but like I remember having like kidnapping plots and like
yes,
eating
yes.
candles for my like Bratz.
Yes, exactly. It was like I needed it to be more exciting. And then leading into like getting into school years all through high school, like I was so drastically bored with every single class except for English. I loved English classes, but everything else was so boring to me that I got so good at tuning out and creating like all day in school when it was like a 7.5 hour school day or however long. I would literally like I would get annoyed when the bell would ring because it would interrupt the story that I was building in my head. And I would have to like literally tell myself, like, we're hitting pause right here. This is the scene that we're at. This is the character that's going on. Get to my next class, sit down, and then restart and rebuild. And anything that like interrupted it would annoy me so much. And I would have to like construct it again. And I got to like I did that all through school. That's all I did in school was literally sit there and daydream and create these stories and alternate realities to the point that I literally would have a hard time distinguishing between what actually happened and what didn't happen. And that's when fast forward to I Hate It Here. That is like a song that I've never resonated with more. The second that I heard that, I replayed it like probably 15 times the first time I heard it because I was like, I've never felt like a song. I've felt like this with a lot of Taylor Swift songs that like, oh, this had to be written for me, but not like that. That was like, oh my gosh. And I had never heard of the term maladaptive daydreaming until that song. And then I started looking into it and I was like, oh, this is what I have done my entire life. And I still do it to this day. And I just like, that's like a top probably my all-time favorite Taylor Swift song just solely for the reason that I've never had that much of a reaction to a song before of like, oh my gosh, this just taught me so much about myself, you know?
I love that. I feel like also something that I'm like thinking of as we're talking is the thinking about other people's perspective stuff, and especially like both of us being Swifties from such a young age. She has like we've talked about it a lot. A lot of her songs, she's like assuming what her partner is feeling and she's like assigning them like emotions based off of what she's observed. And I wonder if we just kind of like started doing that because we listen to too much Taylor Swift and it's just in the psyche now.
She trained us.
Exactly. They wouldn't last an hour in the
Yeah,
asylum.
exactly.
Well, I had a very dramatic childhood, and I remember playing with Barbies. So I had a Barbie hotel, and it was literally just a functioning hotel.
So it's like
Like,
boring
So
childhood,
funny.
dramatic Barbies.
exactly. I think that's so funny. I don't know if there's
It's
any
kind of
correlation
like
to that,
with
but
like fan fiction where like if there's a book or like a show or movie that's like really dramatic and bad things happen to the characters all the time, and then you go read the fan fiction and like half of it is just like they own a coffee shop and everything is fine.
Yeah.
Same thing of like whatever the situation is, you want to do the opposite.
yeah. It's also, I think it's interesting just knowing what people are interested in, like their writing processes, but also like I don't like sci-fi usually. I don't seek out supernatural stories or things that are like fantasy stories. I very much like stories based in reality. I don't even like cartoons that much. Like it's very strange, but I know some people they love the fantasy books. They love things that are outside of like our world. So I don't know. I just find all that stuff really interesting.
Yeah, I feel
Mhm.
like one thing that I'm kind of the same way. I do like a high fantasy here and there, but I love like fantasy that's rooted in like like magical realism, I think is
Mhm.
the genre. Like I mean like my book is like set in the world, but then there's a ghost. Like and obviously
Yeah, yeah.
no ghosts as of yet that I've seen in full corporeal form. So, I think
Right.
that's always like a fun thing of like the world, but just like a little extra. I mean, that's why like Harry Potter or like Percy Jackson is so popular because it's like you can still daydream about like the real world, but then it's just like a little bit more fun version of it.
Yeah. That's you bringing up fan fiction made me think of this. That's one of like my biggest fears with my book is that I'm like, because not that it's fan fiction. That's one thing about this is that Taylor Swift is not a character in this. You know, I just took her albums as inspiration to create the characters. But like the funniest thing that I've felt is like the amount of people who are so excited for it. And then I start to think like, I hope they don't think it's going to be one of those like fan fictions that everything's just like calm because it's not at all. And I'm like, and I also hope you don't think it's going to be like a cheeky, cutie, girly little story because it's also not. It's really dark and twisty and turny. And so I like, that's one of the big things that I've been like, I hope it doesn't shock anyone in a really bad way. But the more people that like, if they've followed me for a while and the things that I've said about it, I feel like they know that. And I've said that a couple times to be like, hey, just a warning. It's not a cutie little girly vibes, you know, it's a little bit deeper. And that's another part of it that has gotten interesting because I did not intend for this to happen. But while all of this was going on, or while I've been writing it, the TikTok ban was happening and, you know, books are being banned and all these things. And so it literally was not intentional at all. But as I like read through while I was doing my first round of edits, I was like, a lot of these characters and a lot of like these themes kind of already naturally are representing like more of an allegorical theme than I had ever like intended to. It just kind of happened. And so I started to dive into that a little bit more and try to make it a little more intentional. So that's like another level that I haven't talked a ton about. And it's not like it wasn't the goal of it from the beginning, but it's just kind of happened. And I think that's part of why I love writing so much is like once you get done with a project and you look back at it, it's like so many subliminal things that were going on in your life while you're writing it started to come out without you even noticing, you know? And so that's one thing that I'm really excited about. Obviously, the people who are listening to this will know, but I'm excited to see if anyone picks up on that didn't know that that was something that I had done or had accidentally done, you know? So that's something I'm excited about. I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I feel like one thing about writing that I love is I feel like writing is just self-discovery in like a different format, even if you're not writing about yourself or like your experiences like you are, because like no bias, no unbiased narrators exist.
Right.
Like I know my book like deals with grief a lot, and so like I put a lot of like my own like grieving thoughts and like processing things into the book while I was writing it. And then it's like I look back and like reread it now and I'm like, wow, yeah, that is all right.
Yep.
All right. Probably
Yep.
should have gone back to therapy a little bit sooner. But you know, the book's all right.
It's also like a time capsule.
Yeah.
You get to see who you were and what you were feeling when you were like through other characters, but still a piece of you is always going to be in what you write.
Mhm. And it evolves over time too, because you can look back at something like even just the poems that I wrote, like I guess over a year ago now, or right around a year ago, that were like predicting songs for the Tortured Poets Department. They're like so different because they were definitely very much influenced by my own experiences. And I don't relate to them at all in the way that I wrote them a year ago, but I still relate to the poem. It just has taken on such a different meaning. And so that's so cool too about like just how different you see things. And even with Taylor Swift songs, there's so many songs that like I grew like All Too Well. I was obsessed with that song when I went through like one, I guess my second breakup ever in high school. And that song was absolutely amazing to me. And I would sing it all the time. I'd listen to it all the time. But now it has such a different meaning to me to listen to it. And it still is it resonates with me on every level, but it's just different. You know, you just hear different things.
Yeah, because it's like you're listening to it as like your current self and then also your like 15-year-old self and your 2-year-old self. And it's like you can relate to it. Like that's one thing that I love about her music is like I have certain songs that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna play this after a first date. And like when you listen to it, it's like, okay, I relate to it this way. And then like the last time I went on a first date, I related to it like in a different way. And it's like you pick up on different things based off of like what you're going through in life. So no matter how many times you listen to a song, like it still is new every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've also talked about how the re-records have done that too with Swifties of like where you were when you heard Fearless for the first time as opposed to Fearless TV and
Mhm.
how you relate to different songs differently and can reflect on where you were and where you are and how interesting that is. And now I'm
Mhm.
also thinking about the having coffee with your younger self trend that's going on right now.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. We were talking about your poem right before we started recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, yours was the first one that I saw actually, because I am chronically offline, as people know. And so I'm not in with the times. And then I realized it was a trend and I started reading other people's and getting really emotional about it. Just the thought of like reflection and seeing where you were and where you are is really powerful to me.
I know. I love that trend. When I saw that, I was like, I've got to do one. And it's so funny too, because like whenever I post my own writing, and I feel like this is anybody, it's like you're taking such a gamble of you're like, I have no idea if anybody else is going to understand this at all, or if anybody else is going to resonate with this at all. And the line that I liked the most out of the one that I wrote was that she doesn't ever think of me and I think of her every day. And just to see that that was the top comment that people like really resonated with that line too. And I was like, it's so funny because that was the one I was the most worried about, where I was like, I don't think if people, I don't know if people will understand like what I mean by this. And it's like with writing, I feel like you just do that where you're like, I have no idea if this makes sense to any other brain but my own. And it's so like validating when it does, especially when it's something that's almost like a sadder line, but then so many people resonate with it. It starts to already like change the meaning of that line to where it's not as sad to me anymore. I'm like, so many people also feel this way, and that's so comforting.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was also one of the lines that really like hit me. And I could see in the comments that it hit other people as well. And it's that same thing. It's that connection. It's not feeling as alone anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the times we do feel like we're the only person that ever feels a certain way or thinks a certain thing. And then the moment we say it out loud and realize that that's not true, it becomes so much less scary.
Yes.
And I've experienced that and I've seen that in other people. And it's just, it's so cool and
Mm-hmm.
And
great.
that's one thing I love, like on social media, is like someone will share a story of like something that they think is like unique, and then it'll be like, oh, actually, I've never had like a unique experience. Like everybody
Yes.
has experience. Somebody out there has done the same thing that I thought was so weird that I did and was so ashamed about. And then you post a silly TikTok about it, and then everybody in the comments is like, oh my God, same.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
Yes.
what?
Especially growing up, there's so much that happens where like you carry so much shame about it, especially like puberty era. Like there's a lot that goes on where we're just like, I am so disgusting and no
Sorry,
one else has ever been.
I'm laughing because I'm picturing the like in my puberty era and the like cutesy font that people like Etsy people will do for Taylor Swift theme things
Oh yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
my
yeah,
bridal
yeah.
era, but like
My puberty era.
sorry, that's why I was laughing, not at what you were saying. It was
That
at what
was
I was thinking about.
traditionally the worst era of anyone's life is puberty
Yes.
era. Um, but just thinking like there's no way, like I am so this is horrible what all the stuff that's happening to me, and then realizing we all go through it
Mm-hmm.
and just the weight that's lifted because of that.
Right.
Or
That's
like
no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, or like the first time you get your heart broken or something, and you're just like, nobody has ever felt this way, and I'm never gonna be okay again. And then you turn to like Taylor Swift's music, and you're like, oh, okay, she got through it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get through this too.
Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
maybe I'm the one person who will never move on. And then she released right where you left me for those people.
Exactly. That's why I think that Taylor Swift has grown to the level that she has, why she is like the biggest superstar of our generation, is because she is so good at like making her songs a different level of vulnerable, you know? And I like one of the my favorite things about her is how many songs, and this is why when a lot of people like kind of come for her and say that she's so full of herself or so, you know, whatever, I'm like, a lot of her lyrics actually are so self-deprecating, like so self-deprecating. And they're also some of the lyrics that I relate to the most because I think all of us, at least on our worst days, are like that. And it is so, so like refreshing and comforting to hear it, not just from somebody else, but to hear it from somebody else who is this huge pop star, you know, but then at the same time, not only is it like validating of, oh, Taylor Swift also feels this way, it's she's putting this song out where 500 million fans are going to love it, which means that this is a really common feeling and I'm not alone at all. It's not just that it's me and Taylor Swift. It's me and Taylor Swift and all of the Swifties. You know, it's like a huge community, like back to that idea of community. It's a huge community of all these things that we feel that we think are so awful that we're never going to get through have been experienced by so many people so many times over and over in their lives, and we are going to get through it, and it's okay. And then it becomes so much more comforting, so much less scary, like you said, but also like in a way, at least for me, listening to Taylor Swift's music or writing my own poetry, it's like it starts to make me really grateful for those experiences, because I'm like, I'm so glad that I have things that give me such a strong feeling, whether it's really good or really bad, that it makes me want to create something, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I've been thinking about that a lot recently because I had a family member pass away unexpectedly.
Oh,
And
I'm
I was like,
sorry.
thank you. I was like reflecting on like grief in general, and it's like living a life full of love means also living a life full of grief, and like having that balance of like the bad things hurt because there are good things. And so like finding that balance is, yeah,
Yeah.
that was the
Mhm.
whole thought.
And yeah, I love what you said about the community, because I think people call Swifties crazy all the time. And I get
Mhm.
why. I mean, we're intense.
Mhm.
I get it. And some people are more intense than others, and it's whatever. But we get so much from this community. We get so much validation.
Mhm.
And like Taylor Swift is confident, and also she has all these insecurities, and we're able to
Right.
see both. Of course, then there's the whole thing of how people hate her when she's confident, people hate her when she's insecure, but that's
Mhm.
just how unfortunately things are.
Yeah, I
Right.
feel like the like Fearless era, I still remember like from when it originally like original Fearless 2008 whenever that was. Um like her whole thing of like being fearless doesn't mean having no fear. It means like being afraid and doing the thing anyways. And like that when I was like an anxious little 12-year-old, groundbreaking.
Yes.
Like what do you mean you can do it scared? Like
I
you can do it
saw
scared.
I saw a clip from her, and I think it was during the 1989 era, but she was doing an interview and she was talking about how she came up with the idea for the Shake It Off music video because of the commentary that she was getting about how awkward she is of a dancer and everything, and that she was just so awkward, blah, blah, blah. And so she was like, I want to do an entire music video of me dancing awkwardly. And they were showing that clip, but then side by side, they were showing her at the Grammys the other day, being the only person in the room that was standing up and dancing the entire time, you know?
You know
And I
what?
was
If I
like,
was invited to the Grammys, I would also be shaking my ass the whole time. So you know
yes,
what? She
yes.
did it for all of us.
Yes, and that's what I also just can't imagine as an artist how performing at anything like the Grammys would probably be the least fun out of any performance you could ever do, just to stare at a bunch of people who are literally just looking straight back at you, or like having little conversations and not paying attention to you at all. And like obviously you have an audience watching you from home and everything that your fans are tuning into, you know. But like seeing the clip where Sabrina Carpenter is out there putting on an absolute amazing performance, and Taylor Swift is the only person standing up. I think her and Margaret Qualley were standing up, that probably because she drug her up and was like dancing with her. But I'm like, I would be looking at her the entire time. And if I was a little baby artist that got my first chance to perform at the Grammys and I was nervous and everything, and I saw Taylor Swift not just dancing, but she knew the lyrics to my songs, because that's the thing too, is like I've seen so many people for whatever reason this past week saying that it's performative. And I'm like, there's a certain threshold where something, even if it is performative, it takes another level because it takes so much intention and time to be that performative, that there is an element of care that has to be there. Because for her to, in her very busy schedule, be able to know exactly who's performing, what are they performing? Let me learn their songs. That way I can be up and singing and dancing. Or she just truly is interested in artists other than, you know, herself, and listening to a bunch of music and knows the words. Like either way, it is genuine at the end of the day. And I'm like, that I would be watching her the entire time. And that would give me so much confidence to see that Taylor Swift is standing up and dancing and singing to my songs, you know? Like I love that about her.
I know. I feel like I love the clip of her. She's wearing Janelle Monáe's jacket and Jack
Yes.
Antonoff's glasses, and she's got a glass of champagne and a bottle of champagne, and she's just like dancing. I can't remember which performance it was, but she was having such a good time. And it's like, why would you
Mhm.
not want that
Yeah.
Yes.
the vibes. Or like I remember when Harry Styles won Album of the Year for Harry's House and like people
Mhm.
were booing and she was the only one who like stood up and was clapping. It's like we've all
Mhm.
listened to 1989. We know that there's history there. But
Oh
like
yeah.
she's still going to be there supporting because she's been the one being booed before. And I think
Hmm.
like her like insistence on supporting other people is just something that you don't see in
Right.
a lot of musical artists because there's like I mean we're all human. There's like insecurity and there's like
Mhm.
people being upset. You know, like I mean if the clip that they have of her face when she didn't win Album of the Year this year and everybody's like, "Oh, she looks so disappointed." It's like, "Yeah, she put out a 31
Right.
track banger of an album and she didn't win." Like
Mhm.
Beyonce's album was also amazing. Obviously, it deserved the win, but like more than one person can deserve an award, but only one person can get it. So it's
Right.
But
Right.
also, she, a huge thing that Taylor Swift emphasizes is being kind and being there for other people. And if that's performative, then like at what point is she just a kind person?
Right. Exactly.
literally I think it's a Miss Americana maybe or a different documentary of hers where she talks about like her guiding like principle in her life is just like trying to be a good person and like that's her goal. It's just like be nice and be kind and be good. And
Mhm.
like obviously everyone again gonna mess up so every like not every time, sometimes. But like that guiding principle of like trying to be good makes such a huge difference. And like I
Mhm.
feel like that's one thing with her is like she tries to be kind and she cares about her music. Like a lot of musicians, I think, don't have as long and like illustrious of a career because they don't care about the music as much. Like you
Hmm.
think about someone like Rihanna who like love her music, but she clearly is just like, okay, I'm done with that now. I don't really like I'm gonna
Right.
go do other things that I care about, which like fair enough. Love Fenty Beauty. Don't go back, Rihanna.
Hmm.
But
Right.
like with her, it's like everything is about the music, and like any other side projects she does have to like relate to her music in some way. Like she did the Eras
Right.
tour movie, but like it's because it was the Eras tour.
Right.
So like people that do spin-off like perfumes or I mean not that she hasn't
Hmm.
done a perfume, but like people who make it a
Bring
whole
it back.
business, bring it back. I still have my enchanted roller ball that
Yeah.
I have not. I still have some left. It's for special occasions only.
That's one thing about her too that I think is funny because all whenever people say like, and I think it's funny too when people are like our capitalist queen and stuff when she has something come out. Like I understand, I get it when people kind of get whatever about that, but at the same time, I do feel like we could recognize she could be way more of a capitalist queen than she is because she really hasn't done a lot of side quests. Like everything she releases is something about her music, even if it's a lot of different variations of an album or different merch or whatever, it is related to her music. And also, you don't have to buy it, but it's not like she could be a celebrity that has like a pajama line out now, a makeup line out now a skincare line, now another perfume, now another perfume, now another perfume. Like there's a lot of celebrities that do that. And it gets very obvious that it's a cash grab. And so I don't think that she does near as much as she possibly could with that. And I think she is so focused on her music career that I don't think she really wants to step out of that, which I respect, but I do get, and I also do think it's funny when people talk about the capitalist queen. I think it's hilarious, but
I'm like, listen, I I'm sitting here in my lover cardigan. Abby's in my
yeah,
midnight cardigan. The thing is with Taylor Swift's merch is also like it's usually like good stuff. I mean,
yeah,
some of the jackets I've seen some pushback on like the quality for
right.
$100, but like the cardigans always high quality. I
Hmm.
have the Tortured Poet snow globe. I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever owned. Instead
Yeah.
of little snow, it's little pieces of paper. It's amazing.
I
Like the
do
attention
also
to
think if
detail.
she did less merch, then people would complain about that too. Like people would say she
Oh,
doesn't put out
absolutely.
enough, she has like she doesn't have a wide enough selection and stuff like that. Like I just feel like once you get to a certain level of fame, no matter what you do, it's going to be criticized. So,
And the
you know.
criticism is the loudest, like it
Yes,
will always be the
exactly.
loudest. But there's always going to be
Exactly.
something people will complain about.
Yeah, and I feel like
Mhm.
it's very human to focus on the criticism and the things that you feel like you're not good at because there's that like, oh, well, if I know what I'm bad at, then I can improve it. And it's like, but not everybody is right about their criticism. And it's
Right.
like that quote that's like, I wouldn't take criticism from somebody that I wouldn't take advice from or whose like life I wouldn't want to live. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, if somebody's insulting me and then I'm like, okay, but like you hate your life why would I want to do what you're telling me to do? Because
Right.
if I had your life, I would also hate it. Like, ugh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I do think it's funny too how like I talked about this on social media earlier this week, but the amount of people that because I can kind of get to the point now with like some of my videos, I have a lot of the same people like being the first to comment on them. And there's been this like one person who just consistently comments how much they cannot stand Taylor Swift on almost anything I post. And I'm like, how do I keep popping up for you? Because I post mainly about Taylor Swift and the book I'm writing, which also has to do with Taylor Swift. So it's like, I feel like if I stumbled across someone whose entire account was dedicated to something I really wasn't a fan of, I probably wouldn't keep watching their stuff, you know? And I clicked on this account and they followed me. And I was like, why are you following me if you cannot stand Taylor Swift? And it's just so interesting because I'm like, the amount of fans that like or the amount of haters that really invest in hating Taylor Swift, I'm like, at what point do you realize that you're a fan? You know, like
Literally. That
quite
was
possibly a bigger fan than I.
we have one video on Instagram that's still like we posted it months ago. It's still doing the rounds. And like somebody commented on it a couple weeks ago and it was like Swifties analyze stuff like they're getting paid for it. And I'm like, well, this is a podcast. We have a Patreon. We are getting paid to
Right.
talk about Taylor Swift. Like, yeah. But even before
Right.
we still were talking like that. Like, and
You're criticizing us like you get paid for it.
exactly. Or like, somebody
Exactly.
commented was like, this is the worst Taylor Swift podcast ever. And it's like, oh, how many Taylor Swift podcasts have you listened to? How did we
Right.
win that award? Do we get a prize?
I would personally love that prize.
I would love.
We would have it
We can
up.
put it where the calendar. I forgot to
That's
get
so
a Taylor Swift
funny.
calendar for this year, so we just have
Blank
friendship
space,
bracelets that.
and I'll write your name. Well, we really want to respect your time. I don't. It's been.
Oh, yeah,
Can
it's
you
been a-
believe it's been over an hour already?
Oh, I literally could do this for 10 hours straight and not know.
Well, we'll have to have you back on. Like
Yes.
maybe
Oh,
when the
yes,
book comes out, we can have
anytime.
you back. That'd be so fun.
Yeah.
I have to know, what are y'all's favorite songs?
Ooh.
There's so many.
I have,
we
like,
actually we
different
just did the
favorite
Taylor Swift
context.
ranking like thing. Have you done that?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like Jesse Pinkman on Tumblr has this.
No, I need to.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll send you the link after this. It's like 1,500 questions. And it's like a ranking of like it'll be two songs against each other, and it's like which one do you like better? And then at the
Oh
end,
my
it gives a
gosh.
full list of all of the songs in order.
I
So
will
the
do
top
this
song when I did that was The
immediately.
Prophecy.
Okay,
I feel like
good.
that's my like you when you first listened to I Hate It Here and you were like, oh my God, this is me. That was me
Yeah.
with Prophecy.
I love The Prophecy so much. That's such a valid answer.
I'm almost positive that mine is 7, but
I can't remember what my like top 5 were. You have to do this quiz though. It takes
it takes
forever
about 2 hours. Yeah.
because like
I will happily do it.
it takes yeah, we did it one month for our like Patreon live stream so that we could like go through.
It's Mirrorball.
Oh, of
Oh.
course, Mirrorball.
I love
That's a good beat.
Mirrorball so much. Mirrorball was my all-time favorite until I Hate It Here, and I still like I feel like I would that's where if those two come next to each other, I don't know what I would say because Mirrorball has like such a special place for me, but also I Hate It Here was like, oh my gosh, this is me in a song, but I feel the same way about Mirrorball. Like
Yeah.
I love those.
And I'm like
It's- and
my top 5. I'm like it was The Prophecy, Right Where You Left Me, Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, and then Forever and Always piano version, and then Forever and Always regular version.
Those are like excellent picks. Excellent picks.
I have a lot from Folklore in my top 5.
That makes sense.
It does.
She became a fan during Folklore era.
I
So,
did.
like,
Okay.
that's when I finally indoctrinated her.
Well, so
It
Kat-
only took a decade.
well, because we've been friends our entire lives. So
Oh,
I've
that's
known
amazing.
about Taylor Swift. I had listened to Taylor Swift.
Because you couldn't exist around me.
Yeah, I couldn't exist around Kat, but also the world. I mean, she's been big since we were like
Right.
8 years old. And then Folklore happened during the pandemic when there was literally nothing else to do. And
Mhm.
so I did the song sorter after listening to Folklore, but I didn't know the first 6 albums very well. So then I ended up listening to them all.
Mhm.
And then the rest is history.
And now we're here.
Now
I do absolutely love Folklore. That will like I think it'll always be a top 3 album for me, but like I think Folklore did such a good job at bringing in so many new fans just because it was like such a different kind of storytelling than she had done, but then it started for me, this is my personal theory is I feel like people listened to Folklore and they were able, it was like more of an obvious, I'm storytelling and there are deeper messages here. And then when you go back, you're like, wait, you've been doing this all along. And I feel like Folklore was kind of the point when she started almost using like other people, like I'm thinking the last great American dynasty, other people's lives to tell her own story through like a more covert way. And really, she's been doing that all along, but it's just been like the reverse of like telling a story through her own experience. And so it was like, I feel like it used to be a lot easier to write her off as just like she writes about her breakups, blah, 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 and that's it. When really it's like, the breakup inspired this song, but it's not about the breakup. You know, there's so many songs that I feel like All Too Well, I'm like, that one is a hill I'll die on. I'm like, that is not about the man at all. He is so irrelevant. It is literally like just a cathartic experience of this is what you go through in a relationship like this, and every woman on the planet can identify with this, you know?
I feel like All Too Well, especially, like, there's such a like coming of age energy to like Speak Now and Red. I think that just like, especially in the context of like listening to through all the albums, like I talk a lot about whenever we cover Speak Now songs about that being like her like daydream, like romanticizing everything era. And then Red is just like the real world crashing down because you thought you had the daydream and then now you have All Too Well.
Yes.
Yeah. I love Folklore. I think Midnights will always be like that girl for me because it came out at exactly the right time in my life. And it was just, I claimed it the moment it was announced and then I listened to it forever. And it's like, it's not even that every single song on that album is my favorite, but it's the vibe. It's everything.
Oh yeah. Midnights is an era I wish lasted longer because it was such a good era. Like just everything about it was perfect to me.
Yeah.
I know that's one thing with the Eras tour is like Lover didn't get its own tour, Midnights didn't, obviously Tortured Poets didn't.
But
that's crazy to think about. Like
tour.
she has more. Am I right about this? Does she have more albums out now that did not get a tour than did? Or
I think
almost
so, yeah,
50-50
because
she
Debut
has-
technically didn't get a tour.
Yeah, Debut,
That tips the
Lover,
scale.
Debut, Lover,
Folklore,
Evermore.
Midnights, and Tortured Poets.
Yeah, 6 out of the 11.
whoa,
That's crazy. But then like
That
all of
is
them
so
exist
crazy.
on other tours in some way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
I think it's just one of the things about her, and every tour I've been to has been this way. The first tour I went to was 1989. So 1989 Reputation and Eras tour has been like this, and it's only grown every single time. I can't think of a single other artist that I could go to where every single song, every fan is singing, like every word to it. You know, that's crazy to me, especially with a 3.5 hour long show where it's like not just like singing, but screaming every single lyric. And especially that she can just throw out 2 random songs that nobody knows she's going to sing and everybody knows the words to it within the first chord she plays. Like it's wild.
Yeah.
I know, yeah. There's such a like sense of devotion to Taylor Swift that's just it's hard to replicate with other artists because I think that like when you start becoming a fan of an artist and then you kind of get into the fandom, it really depends on how the fandom is on like whether or not you get deeper into it. And I feel like Swifties, like obviously there's always going to be like toxic parts of a fandom, but I feel like Swifties as a whole is such a like I'm like a yes and fandom where it's like you say something and somebody be like, oh, I totally agree, and this and like add to it as opposed to like, no, you're wrong, and like let's have discourse about this. Like Swifties, there is discourse, but it's not like the center of being a Swiftie is not about arguing with people. It's about like connecting more. And I think that's such a like part of the reason why Taylor Swift is so big is because she fosters that like sense of community and belonging.
Yeah. So your favorite era is Midnights overall. What about yours?
I'm always gonna be a rep girly. I feel like Tortured Poets is like a close second because the Tortured Poets department is just like every English department ever, and I'm like, that's my home. So, but I feel like Reputation is just such a like big like moment, especially in my life. I remember I kind of had like fallen out of Taylor Swift a little bit because the college I went to was very like hipster, like everybody was trying to be cooler than everybody else. So like liking Taylor Swift, I would get made fun of by my like friends doing air quotes for people listening. And then my like roommate at the time that Reputation came out. It was like random roommate. She's now like one of my best friends. Like we went to Eras tour with her.
Hmm.
And she bought like a bunch of copies of Reputation because of like the magazine things. And so she was going out of town for the weekend and she like left one. She moved my glasses from next to my bed and put the Reputation album there instead and put a sticky note on it that said like, listen to this, it's gonna change your life. And like she was right. So like
Yeah.
Reputation is always gonna be like that. Like I listened to it and I was like, why am I ashamed of listening to Taylor Swift? Everybody else should be ashamed for not listening to Taylor Swift. You know what? This is now a hill that I will die on.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. That I have a funny story for y'all about what I did during the Reputation era. But I've a similar story. Like I never fell off, but I just like didn't talk about Taylor Swift to the extent that I do now. A, because we had like less, I didn't really post on social media or anything. But B, because like anyone who would ask who my favorite artist was, if I said Taylor Swift, it was immediately like you're getting laughed at and people are being rude to you and stuff. So I would just like not really say, but she definitely was. And then freshman year of college, my not my roommate, but she practically became my roommate. She was the next dorm over from me. And I had never met her before until college. Her name's Lindsay, and now she's one of my absolute best friends. And we became absolute best friends like the second we met. But she's a huge Swiftie and unapologetically unashamed Swiftie all through the Reputation era. So we like were so in it together of just so excited for the album, so excited for everything. And on album release day, one thing that Taylor Swift is known to do is go to Target and sign the copies, like make an appearance there. And she did that in Nashville at the Target that was 10 minutes down the road from where we were at college. And so we were like, we've got to go and see if she's still there. And so me and one of my friends, unfortunately, it was not Lindsay. She was out of town, but me and one of my friends go and we get to Target and she had literally just left. Like she had just left. There was still a group of people that were like all gushing because they just met Taylor Swift and they're like have their selfies and stuff. And I, in that moment, was like, there is another Target like just a couple minutes down the road. What are the chances that she goes to both? It would be worth going, you know? And so we go, and you know how on album release day they have like the stands in the front with like her merch and everything, and they had all the magazines. So we go and we're standing there, and I bought a magazine because I was like, if she comes in, I need something for her to sign. So I bought one of those, and we're standing there, and there was a couple that walked in that had walked in with us at the other Target, and they were like, we overheard y'all, and we were like, that's a good idea. We're gonna come stand here too. So long story short, over the course of like the next 30 minutes, everyone who came in and we were just like lurking right there would ask us what we were doing. And then they would join the line. And then more people kept joining the line. And it got to the point that the line literally wrapped all the way back to the electronics section. And all of these people, like the Target employees, called for extra security. And the worst part about it is like, it was just a miscommunication of they thought that something must be going on because of all these people. So they called for extra security. And because they called for extra security, we all thought that they knew something, that there was something going on. And so we stayed until 11 o'clock when the Target closed and they had to let us go and make everyone leave. And the whole time I was sitting there, I was like, this is because of me. Like I single-handedly contributed to probably over at least a couple hundred people. I mean, all the way back to the electronics. It was so crazy. And I made friends with the Target security guard that was like standing at the front of the line with us. Her name was Karen, and she signed my my magazine. So I have a signature from her in there.
The mistake ended up being Karen on the rep tour. So really,
right.
it was an Easter egg.
Exactly. Invisible string. But yeah, that was like a moment where I was like, herd mentality is crazy and I'm more powerful than I ever thought. This is wild. But yeah, I also was really scared going to my car because I was like, are people going to beat me up if they find out that this is all because I was like, maybe she's coming. Who knows? Let's just stand here. But yeah, that was very interesting. But I love Reputation, but I think my absolute favorite is Tortured Poets Department. I feel like I have to have it as my favorite because if things go well for me and I end up having a career as an author and my book is successful, then like I will kind of owe it all to this album. Like if it wasn't for this album, I wouldn't have come up with this idea at all, you know? And it's very poetic that literally I dropped out of grad school before this happened, before she announced the album and everything, but I wanted to be a writer. And huge Swiftie. And then a couple, just weeks basically after dropping out of grad school, she announces her next album is Tortured Poets Department. And I was just like, what in the world? Like, I felt like it was a sign that I'm on the right path. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's awesome. Oh my gosh. We didn't even get to some of the topics that we meant to get to today about like theories and interpretations and stuff. So like we really would love to have you back.
Please, anytime, especially breaking down any Taylor Swift song. Like, it's my favorite thing on the planet. It's almost a challenge to see how like wonky I can get with it. I'm like, how crazy can we make
Oh,
this?
absolutely.
So you fit right in,
Yeah.
basically.
Perfect.
Awesome. So how can people reach you, follow you, find you?
My username is at Britton Rae, BrittonRae on everything. And even on Substack, even though my Substack is called Grad School Dropout, my username is still at Britton Rae. So you can look that up either way. But yeah, I'm on Substack. I'm on Instagram, even though I don't post as much as I should. I post mainly on TikTok. But yeah, that's where I am. And I post pretty much every thought that enters my brain. So if you follow me anywhere, then you'll know when the book is coming as soon as I know.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
this
you
has
so much for
been
being
literally so much fun. I will come back any day that you ever want me to. So, anytime.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
It was lovely to meet you.
It was so nice to meet you guys.
All right. Well, until next time, and good luck with the final stages of book development and
you.
Yes,
release.
everything is rough, but
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I'm excited for you guys to hopefully read it.
Yes,
oh,
of
100%.
course. Of
You
course.
need a beta reader. I'm there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We're in.
Awesome.
All right. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you again so much, Britton, for coming on the podcast. That was honestly just what I needed to cap off this week. Yeah, that was wonderful. She already mentioned in the interview where you can find her at Britton Rae on TikTok, Substack, everywhere, etc., etc. And you definitely should follow her because I love seeing her videos pop up because she's always got good takes on Taylor. Yep, she's got good writing takes. I'm so excited for this book too. Me too. I cannot wait. And I read a little bit of stuff on the Substack. Like she mentioned that she put like preview stuff, first draft stuff. And so I read a little bit of that, and her writing style, top tier. Her poetry, amazing. We were just talking about how well spoken she is. Yeah. Just we want to hear her thoughts on everything. So she will be back one day. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to us and for being back this week. If you want to reach us on socials, they are at Swiftlore Pod on Instagram and at Swiftlore Pod on TikTok. We also have the Patreon. Anyway, that's about it. I'm tapped out. So let's tap out. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Time for a crispy... Oh, wait. Thank you to our Swifties tier patrons, Bethany M, September, Ashley, and Liam. Woo, we love you, as always, every week. Just all the love in the world. And thank you all for listening. Until next week. Bye-bye. Bye. Crispy honey buns. Crisp it. Air fried. I don't know why I said that. Bye. Air fried. Sorry.